The Three Sluggards. A king had 3 sons who were all equally dear to him, and he did not know which of them to appoint as his successor after his own death. When the time came for him to die, he summoned them to his bedside and said, "Dear children, I have considered something which I will reveal to you. Whoever among you is the laziest shall become king after me." The eldest said, "Father, then the kingdom is mine, for I am so lazy that when I lie down to sleep, if a drop falls into my eye, I will not close it to fall asleep." The second said, "Father, the kingdom belongs to me, for I am so lazy that when I sit by the fire to warm myself, I would rather let my heels burn than pull back my legs." The third said, "Father, the kingdom is mine, for I am so lazy that if I were to be hanged, and already had the rope around my neck, and someone gave me a sharp knife in my hand to cut the rope, I would rather let myself be hanged than lift my hand to the rope." When the father heard this, he said, "You have taken it the furthest and shall be the king." The 12 Idle Servants. 12 servants who had done nothing all day did not want to exert themselves in the evening either, but lay down in the grass and boasted of their laziness. The first one said, "What do I care about your laziness? I have to deal with my own. Taking care of my body is my main job. I don't eat a little and drink even more. After I have had 4 meals, I fast for a short time until I feel hungry again. That suits me best. Getting up early is not my thing. When it's nearing midday, I already find a resting place for myself. If the master calls, I act as if I haven't heard him, and if he calls a second time, I wait a while before I get up and then go very slowly. That way life is bearable." The second one said, "I have a horse to look after, but I leave the bit in its mouth, and if I don't want to, I don't give it any food and say it has already eaten. I lay myself in the oat chest and sleep for 4 hours. After that, I stretch out one foot and move it a couple of times over the horse's body, and then it is groomed and cleaned. Who would make a great fuss about that? Nevertheless, service is still too burdensome for me." The third one said, "Why bother with work? Nothing comes of it. I laid myself in the sun and fell asleep. It started to drizzle a little, but why get up? I let it rain on in God's name. Finally, a downpour came, so heavy indeed that it pulled the hair out of my head and washed it away, and I got a hole in my skull. I put a plaster on it, and then it was fine. I've had several injuries like that before." The fourth one said, "If I'm to undertake a task, I first linger for an hour to save my strength. After that, I start very slowly and ask if there's anyone else who could help me. Then I let them do the main work, and in reality, I just watch. But even that is too much for me." The fifth one said, "What does it matter? Just think, I'm supposed to remove the manure from the horse's stable and load it onto the cart. I take it slow, and if I fork something up, I only lift it halfway and then rest for a quarter of an hour before I throw it all the way in. It's more than enough if I take out a cartful in a day. I have no desire to work myself to death." The sixth one said, "Shame on you. I'm not afraid of any work, but I lie down for 3 weeks and don't even take off my clothes. Why buckle my shoes? They can fall off my feet for all I care. It doesn't matter. If I'm going up some stairs, I drag one foot slowly after the other onto the first step. Then I count the rest so I know where I need to rest." The seventh said, "For me, that won't do. My master oversees my work, though he's not home all day. But I neglect nothing. I run as fast as possible when one crawls. If I'm to make progress, 4 sturdy men would have to push me with all their might. I came to where 6 were lying together on a bed sleeping. I lay down with them and slept too. I couldn't be woken again, and if they wanted me home, they had to carry me away." The eighth said, "I see clearly that I'm the only lively fellow. If a stone lies before me, I don't bother to lift my legs and step over it. I lie down on the ground, and if I'm wet, covered in mud and dirt, I stay lying until the sun dries me out again. At most, I turn myself so that it can shine on me." The ninth said, "That's the way to go. Today, bread was in front of me, but I was too lazy to grab it and nearly died of hunger. Also, there was a jug, but it was so big and heavy that I didn't want to lift it up and preferred to endure thirst. Just turning myself around was too much for me. I lay like a log all day long." The tenth said, "Laziness has brought me harm, a broken leg and swollen calves. 3 of us were lying on a road, and I had my legs outstretched. Someone came with a cart, and its wheels rolled over me. I could have drawn back my legs, of course, but I didn't hear the cart coming. The midges were buzzing around my ears, crawling in through my nose and out through my mouth. Who would bother to drive the vermin away? The 11th said, "Yesterday, I quit my job. I didn't feel like carrying heavy books for my master any longer, or fetching them back and forth. It never ended all day long. But to tell the truth, he dismissed me and didn't want to keep me any longer, because his clothes, which I had left lying in the dust, were eaten by moths. And that was fair." The 12th said, "Today I had to drive the wagon across the fields. I made myself a bed of straw on it and fell asleep properly. The reins slipped from my hand, and when I woke up, the horse had almost broken loose. The harness was gone, the back rope, collar, bridle, and bit. Someone had come by and taken everything away. Moreover, the wagon had got into a puddle and was stuck. I left it standing and stretched out on the straw again. Finally, the master came himself and pushed the wagon out, and if he hadn't come, I wouldn't be lying here, but over there, sleeping in peace." In the tale of the shepherd boy. The shepherd boy was once famous far and wide for his wise answers to every question. The king of the land heard of this, and not believing it, summoned the boy. He said to him, "If you can answer 3 questions I will ask you, I will regard you as my own child, and you shall live with me in my royal palace." The boy asked, "What are the 3 questions?" The king replied, "The first is, how many drops of water are there in the world's oceans?" The shepherd boy responded, "Lord King, if you dam up all the rivers on earth so that not a single drop runs into the sea until I have counted it, then I will tell you how many drops are in the sea." The king then said, "The next question is, how many stars are there in the sky?" The shepherd boy said, "Give me a large sheet of white paper," and proceeded to make so many fine points with a pen that they were barely visible and almost impossible to count, causing one's eyes to ache when looking upon them. He then said, "There are as many stars in the sky as there are points on this paper. Try counting them." But no one was able to do so. The king continued, "The third question is, how many seconds are there in eternity?" The shepherd boy replied, "In Lower Pomerania lies the Diamond Mountain, which is an hour high, an hour wide, and an hour deep. Every 100 years a little bird comes and sharpens its beak on it, and when the entire mountain is worn away, then the first second of eternity will be over." The king said, "You have answered the 3 questions like a wise man, and from now on you shall live with me in my royal palace, and I will regard you as my own child." The Star Money, a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, there was a little girl whose father and mother had died. She was so poor that she no longer had a small room to live in or a bed to sleep in. Eventually, all she had left were the clothes she was wearing and a small piece of bread in her hand that a kind soul had given her. Despite her hardships, she was good and pious. Forsaken by the world, she ventured out into the open country, trusting in the good God. A poor man met her and said, "Ah, give me something to eat. I am so hungry." She handed him her entire piece of bread and said, "May God bless it for your use," and continued on her way. Soon after, a child approached her, moaning, "My head is so cold. Give me something to cover it." She took off her hood and gave it to the child. A little farther along, she met another child who had no jacket and was shivering from the cold. She gave her own jacket to the child. Further along, another child begged for a frock, and she gave away her frock as well. Finally, she entered a forest as night was falling, and another child came to her asking for a little shirt. The good little girl thought, "It is a dark night, and no one sees you. You can very well give away your little shirt," and she took it off and gave it to the child. As she stood there, having nothing left, suddenly, stars began to fall from the sky, and they turned into hard, smooth pieces of money. Even though she had just given away her little shirt, she now had a new one made of the finest linen. She gathered the money into this new shirt and was rich for the rest of her life. The Stolen Farthing. Once, a father was sitting at the table with his wife and children for lunch, and a good friend who had come to visit was eating with them. As they sat there and the clock struck 12, the stranger saw the door open, and a very pale child dressed in snow-white clothes came in. It did not look around or speak, but went straight into the next room. Shortly after, it returned and went out the door again just as quietly. On the second and third day, it came in the same manner. Finally, the stranger asked the father to whom the beautiful child that went into the room every day at noon belonged. "I have not seen it," he replied, "and do not know to whom it could belong." The next day, when it came again, the stranger pointed it out to the father, but he did not see it, nor did the mother or the children. Then the stranger got up, went to the room door, opened it a little, and peeped in. He saw the child sitting on the ground, diligently digging and searching between the floorboards with its fingers. When the child noticed the stranger, it disappeared. The stranger described what he had seen and described the child exactly, and the mother recognized it and said, "Ah, it is my dear child who died 4 weeks ago." They lifted the floorboards and found 2 farthings. The child had once received these from its mother to give to a poor man, but it had thought, "You can buy yourself a biscuit with this," kept the farthings, and hidden them in the floorboards. Because of this, the child had found no rest in its grave and had come every day at noon to search for the farthings. The parents gave the money to a poor man, and after that, the child was never seen again. The bride selection. There was once a young shepherd who wished very much to marry and knew 3 sisters, each as beautiful as the other, making it difficult for him to choose and decide which one to favor. He asked his mother for advice, and she said, "Invite all 3 and set some cheese before them, and watch how they cut it." The young man did as his mother suggested. The first sister swallowed the cheese with the rind. The second sister hastily cut the rind off the cheese, but because she was so hasty, she left a lot of good cheese with the rind and threw it away. The third sister carefully peeled the rind, not too much and not too little. The shepherd reported all this to his mother, who said, "Take the third one as your wife." He did so and lived contentedly and happily with her,